Are you sure that human history is a straight line from caves to technology? What if, thousands of years ago, engineers were moving 16,000-ton monoliths and cutting granite 500 times faster than modern machines? Forget what you've been told. Look at this. India. The Barabar Caves. The official date is the 3rd century BC, during the Mauryan Empire. On paper, it all adds up. But now, let's look at reality. You're in the suffocating, humid heat of India. You enter a mountain of pure granite. The air inside is cold and still. The light from your flashlight glides across the wall and reflects as if in a black mirror. The sound of your footsteps doesn't fade, but transforms into a hum that vibrates in your bones. And this is where the real problem begins. The material is granite, with a hardness of 7 on the Mohs scale. The official tools of that era were copper and iron. Stop! Any geologist will tell you that working granite with copper is like cutting steel with modeling clay. It's physically impossible. But they did it. The curved inner walls are polished to a mirror finish, with a deviation of only a fraction of a millimeter. And there's another detail. To carve out these caves, hundreds of tons of rock had to be removed. Where is the construction debris? Where are the rock piles? They don't exist. The stone simply vanished. Think about it. But this isn't just about polishing. This is an acoustic machine, a perfect resonator that amplifies specific frequencies. Why would primitive builders need to create technology that we are only just beginning to understand? This wasn't a temple. It was an instrument. And it gets worse. If in Barabar we see the result of an unknown technology, in China we see a failed attempt to copy it. The Yangshan Quarry, the early 15th century. Emperor Zhu Di, one of the most powerful rulers in history, is building the Forbidden City. He has unlimited resources, an army of workers, and the best engineers in the empire. He decides to create a stele for his father, and for that, he needs a monolith. An abandoned quarry. Silence. Before you lies a fractured monster, a stone block the size of an apartment building. It is so enormous that it seems like part of the landscape rather than a man-made creation. Nearby are tool marks, the marks of desperation. The base of this stele weighs 16,000 tons. Let's do the math. 16,000 tons is like 160 blue whales, or 40 fully fueled Boeing 747s. They tell you stories about wooden rollers and icy roads in winter. Stop. Any engineer will tell you that under such weight, the rollers would be crushed into splinters. Ice under that kind of point pressure would melt instantly. To move such a mass, you don't just need an army. You need technology that the Ming Dynasty did not have. And they realized it too late. Officially, the project was simply halted. But the documents and the very sight of this abandoned giant scream something else. They didn't halt it. They failed. The engineers of one of the most advanced civilizations of their time tried to copy the technologies of their ancestors and suffered a complete, humiliating collapse. And this is where the real problem begins. The question is, whose technology were they trying to replicate? From the heart of a continental empire, we travel to a tiny island in the Pacific Ocean, Ha'amonga Amaui, in the Kingdom of Tonga. Here, the official version cracks even more loudly, because there is not even a theoretical possibility to justify what stands before your eyes. Salty wind, soft, unstable ground underfoot, palm trees, and in the middle of this tropical paradise, there are stone gates leading to nowhere. A trilithon. 2 vertical blocks of 30 to 40 tons each, with a lintel of another 9 tons on top. The stone is cold, covered in lichen. It feels as if it has stood here forever, defying all laws of physics. Officially, it was built by Polynesians in the year 1200. But there's a catch. There is no forest on the island that could provide rollers capable of supporting 40 tons. The soil is as soft as a sponge. Any earthen ramp would have sunk under that weight, turning the construction site into a swamp. But the most chilling part is the joint. The lintel doesn't just rest on top. It is fitted into the vertical supports with a mortise and tenon joint. Stop. This is a complex carpentry technique applied to coral limestone. It's done for strength, to help the structure withstand loads. What loads are there in a seismically calm region? Why such complexity when they could have just placed the stone on top? This is not primitive logic. This is the logic of an engineer solving a problem unknown to us. Local legends say the stones floated across the water from 500 miles away. This shatters everything we've been told about Polynesian boats. And the cherry on top? This isn't just a gate. It's an observatory, perfectly aligned with the sunrise on the winter and summer solstices. Primitive tribes? No. This was a seafaring civilization with precise astronomy and cargo technologies we know nothing about. Astronomy on a tiny island is impressive. But in Egypt, 4,000 years before the pharaohs, things were on a completely different level. We move to the Sahara Desert, Nabta Playa, 7,000 years BC. The scorching air shimmers over the sand. There is nothing here but stones and a piercing wind. The silence is so profound it's deafening. You are standing in the middle of a stone calendar that is older than anything you know about civilization. Older than the pyramids. Older than Sumer. Officially, it was made by nomadic cattle herders. But these stones don't just track the year, they track the precession of the equinoxes. A full cycle is 25,920 years. Wait, stop. To even notice this shift of the celestial axis, you would need continuous, methodical observations over hundreds, if not thousands of years. And complex mathematics to calculate the cycle. Now ask yourself, can you imagine a tribe of nomads passing down astronomical data from generation to generation for 2,000 years to build a calendar they had absolutely no use for in herding cattle? No, this is not their knowledge. It is a fragment of something much larger. And this fragment proves that highly developed science existed thousands of years before the official start of civilization. Ancient knowledge is one thing. But what about industrial manufacturing during the Ice Age? We travel to Bolivia, Puma Punku. An altitude of 3,800 meters, 12,500 feet above sea level. The air is thin and cold. It makes your head spin and your ears ring. Here, on the roof of the world, giant H-blocks are scattered about like pieces from a Lego set that a giant started to assemble and then abandoned. Perfectly straight edges, grooves, and precise 90-degree internal angles. Listen, this doesn't look like manual labor. This looks like industrial manufacturing. The blocks of andesite, an incredibly hard volcanic rock, are not just cut, they are interchangeable. These are modules, standardized parts. They could be assembled in any sequence to build gigantic structures. These are not temples carved by priests in a ritual trance. These are components. And they scream of technology. They will tell you this was done by the Incas or their ancestors with stone hammers and bronze chisels. Stop. Andesite is a rock second only to diamond in hardness. To make such cuts, especially with internal angles, you would need a tool harder than the andesite itself. Physics says no. But the scariest part isn't even the technology, it's the dating. Arthur Poznański, an Austro-Bolivian engineer and archaeologist, spent decades studying the complex. He didn't guess, he calculated. Poznański proved that the complex was aligned with the stars and served as an observatory. And his astronomical calculations yielded a construction date that official history simply turns away from. The complex was aligned with the stars as they appeared in 15,000 BC, the Ice Age. Think about that. The stones were held together with metal clamps, a technology that wouldn't be rediscovered for thousands of years. The patterns on the monoliths bear an eerie resemblance to circuit boards. Official science ignores these calculations. It doesn't refute them, it ignores them. Because to admit this would mean throwing the entire established timeline of humanity into the trash. And textbooks don't like to rewrite themselves. If at Puma Punku we see the finished product, in Egypt we see traces of the manufacturing process itself. And it wasn't copper chisels. Forget the majesty of the pyramids for a second. Forget the Sphinx. That's all a facade, a tourist postcard. The real evidence lies at your feet, in the dust, where no one looks. Dust, heat, the hum of voices. You are walking through the Giza temple complex, but you're not looking up, you're looking down. At the granite sarcophagi in the Serapeum, at the basalt floors in the temples, at the scattered blocks. And on them, you see something that shouldn't be there. Perfectly circular holes and smooth spiral grooves. As if a giant industrial drill was at work here. Your fingers feel the sharp, even edges of the cut. Too even. In 1883, the father of Egyptology, Sir William Flinders Petrie, did something modern historians don't. He didn't make assumptions. He simply measured what he saw. He documented the tool marks on granite and diorite, and his conclusion was devastating to the official story. The spiral grooves from the drill are not just scratches. Their pitch, the distance between the spirals, directly indicates the speed at which the tool penetrated the stone. It's a simple physics calculation. Let's check it. Petrie calculated that the feed rate of the tool, based on these marks, was such that the drill advanced 2.5 millimeters into the granite with a single rotation. 1 second. To understand the scale of this disaster, you need a comparison. A modern industrial drill with a diamond-coated bit advances into granite at a rate of 0.05 millimeters per revolution. This means the ancient drill cut into one of the hardest materials on the planet 500 times faster than our most advanced technology. 500 times. This will sound insane to you, and you will immediately be offered a convenient, soothing explanation. The official version goes like this. It was a simple copper tube with abrasive sand poured inside, and it was rotated. All right, try to make deep, uniform spiral grooves with that pitch in granite using a soft copper tube in sand. You can't. Physics is against it. To cut granite at that speed, you need to apply several tons of pressure to the tool. Under that pressure, a copper tube would simply buckle and be ground to dust in seconds. Period. These are the marks of machine tooling, traces of an incredibly powerful technology that cut through granite like we cut through butter today. And this isn't an isolated anomaly found in one place. This was the standard technology of the Giza builders. It's everywhere. And this is where the real problem begins. This isn't just a drill. It's proof of an industrial-scale catastrophe in our timeline. And while here we see fine, high-precision work, in other parts of the world, the same civilization showed a very different side of itself. Raw, inhuman strength. From high-tech processing to raw, inhuman strength. The Browns Hill Dolmen, Ireland, 4,000 years BC. Here, the official version of history doesn't just crack, it breaks under its own weight. Cold Irish rain. The wind cuts your face, and the gray sky presses down on your shoulders. You are standing before a giant granite mushroom. A massive slab weighing as much as a blue whale rests on several vertical stones. It seems to barely touch them, bouncing on the verge of falling for 6,000 years. It is here, in this damp silence, that physics delivers a death sentence to the textbooks. The capstone weighs between 100 and 150 tons, according to various estimates. Let's take the average, 150 tons. That's the weight of 100 cars, or a fully fueled Boeing 737. The official version, an earthen ramp, and rollers. Stop. Let's do the math again. Any wooden rollers, even made from the strongest wood, would be crushed into splinters under that weight. They wouldn't hold. It's a simple law of material strength. To drag such a load up an earthen ramp would require an army of thousands and impossibly thick ropes. But even if you can picture that, it's not the hardest part. The hardest part comes next. They didn't just drag it there. They balanced it with surgical precision on 3 slender supports. The gap between the slab and the supports is minimal. This is not a task for brute force and shouts of 1, 2, 3, heave! This is a job for a precision crane that can lower a 150-ton load with millimeter accuracy. They didn't have cranes. Or did they have something else? This isn't a question of faith, it's a question of logistics. And here, the logistics collapse. The Irish dolmen is not a monument to a primitive religion. It's a monument to a technology we cannot explain. And if 150 tons seems like a challenge, that's just the beginning. Because in the Siberian taiga, the stakes are 20 times higher. Gornaya Shoria, a place the textbooks prefer to ignore. The remote taiga, hundreds of kilometers without a single road. The air rings with cold, and the crack of a dry branch under your boot sounds deafening. Suddenly, the trees part, and you freeze. Before you is a wall. It rises 40 meters, 130 feet, into the air, constructed of giant granite blocks with right angles and flat faces. This is not a mountain. It is a structure, and it evokes a primal, chilling terror. The weight of individual blocks reaches 3,000 tons. 3,000 tons. That's more than double the weight of the heaviest blocks at Baalbek, which are themselves considered a technological marvel. That's the weight of 50 T-90 tanks in a single stone. They weren't just cut from the rock, they were lifted to a height and assembled into a wall. Now, they'll tell you, it's just geology, a trick of nature. Frost weathering. Stop. Nature doesn't create perfect right angles over tens of meters. Geology doesn't stack megaliths in polygonal masonry, where one block is perfectly fitted to another. Does it use a giant laser level? This version falls apart at first glance. It's convenient because it allows us to avoid the main question, who built this and how? But even the weight isn't the most disturbing part. And this is where it gets truly unsettling. On the surface of the granite blocks, there are traces of melting. The stone looks as if it was struck by an energy of incredible temperature, melting the surface, like the result of a powerful thermal impact. And that's not all. Geophysical instruments go haywire here. Compass needles start spinning. The magnetic field is unstable. This isn't just an ancient construction site. It's the site of a catastrophe. Or the site of a technology that left a scar on the planet's magnetic field. We've seen technologies that move stone. Now, we look at something usually edited out of the retellings. A technology aimed not at granite, but at human consciousness. Malta, the Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni, 4,000 years BC, 1,500 years before the official start of Stonehenge's construction. 1,500 years before the first dynasty of pharaohs. You descend underground. The air becomes thick and cold. The smell of dampness, stone, and something else. Eternity. 11 meters, 36 feet down. 3 levels carved directly into the limestone rock. This is not construction. It is sculpture. Labyrinths, halls, and niches imitating above-ground temples. And there is one room here. The oracle chamber. It's almost completely dark. You step inside. The silence is oppressive. You try to make a sound with a low male voice. And then the nightmare begins. The sound doesn't fade. It doesn't echo. It comes alive. It begins to vibrate, filling the entire space. The stone walls, floor, and ceiling, everything resonates. Your body begins to hum in unison with this sound. The vibration penetrates your bones, your chest, your skull. This isn't mysticism, it's physics. Acoustic engineering perfected. The room is designed to resonate at a very specific frequency. Exactly 110 hertz. Remember that number, because it's not a coincidence, it's a key. Studies conducted in the 21st century have proven that a sound frequency in the range of 108 to 114 hertz directly affects the activity of the human cerebral cortex. It temporarily deactivates the centers responsible for language and logical thought. And simultaneously, it activates areas of the right hemisphere associated with intuition, creativity, and emotional perception. It induces a state of trance. A machine for controlling consciousness, built 6,000 years ago. Think about it for a second. The Stone Age. Officially, primitive tribes with stone axes. But here, underground, they are carving an acoustic resonator out of the rock to alter states of consciousness. And on the surface, at the same time, they are building megalithic temples from 57-ton blocks. This is not religion as we understand it. This is psychophysical technology. They knew how to move incredible weights. They possessed astronomy that required millennia of observation. They cut granite at an industrial speed. And they knew how to tune the human brain like a musical instrument. And this brings us to the oldest and most unsettling site on the planet. To a place that proves they didn't just disappear. They hid their knowledge, intentionally. And what follows is the final protocol, the one that shatters the entire timeline for good. Turkey, 10,000 years BC. A dusty hill under a scorching sun that until recently no one had heard of. Karahan Tepe. This site is older and more complex than the famous Göbekli Tepe. Here, 12,000 years ago, people we are told were hunter-gatherers didn't just erect T-shaped pillars. They carved entire halls, columns, and three-dimensional human sculptures with incredible detail directly out of the solid bedrock. A technology that breaks the official timeline. But that's not the most chilling part. Around 8,000 BC, they did something completely illogical. They didn't abandon their complex. They intentionally buried it under hundreds of thousands of tons of earth and stone. Hold on. They were preserving it, hiding it. This was a deliberate protocol of concealment. And now the entire picture comes together. So, mirror-like polishing of granite, impossible with manual tools. Unliftable 16,000-ton monoliths that couldn't be replicated even in the Middle Ages. Astronomy tracking 26,000-year precessional cycles. Machine tooling of super-hard rocks in the middle of the Ice Age. Acoustic control of human consciousness through resonance. And finally, the intentional, methodical concealment of all these technologies 10,000 years ago. I understand why the version about primitive ancestors with copper chisels is so appealing. It's simple, convenient, and doesn't require rewriting textbooks. And that's precisely why it's repeated over and over. But when you look at the numbers, the physics, the logistics, it becomes unsettling. Because that's where it breaks down. And what comes next is what the textbooks prefer to ignore. At this point, the official version of history ends, period. Not because it sounds dramatic, but because it cannot withstand the scrutiny of its own laws of physics. Save this video. Check the numbers for yourself on the Giza drilling speeds or the weight of the Browns Hill dolmen. Write in the comments which fact shatters the official version the most, and turn on notifications. In the next episode, we will analyze the pattern that connects all these sites, and it's even more inconvenient than anything you've heard today. All these monuments scream one thing. The peak of technology was thousands of years ago, after which a global restart, a civilizational rollback occurred. But the main question isn't what technologies they possessed. It's what made them first hide their knowledge and then disappear. And are we now repeating their path?